often find ourselves striving for inclusion, striving to fit in, striving to be with the, whatever you want to call it, the in crowd from the earliest days, from our grade school experiences on up, right? In the workplace, at the gym, in church. I mean, trying to figure out where we fit, where are our people, who can we feel safe with. That's just very natural, very normal, part of our being created in God's image. So it's healthy and it's good, and oftentimes, is this not true? Oftentimes, it can become burdensome to us. Some of our deepest disappointments, some of the most profound hurts in our lives have come in relationships. I know that's true of you. If you've lived any life at all, I know that's true of you. Things may be weighing on you this very moment related to relational challenges, where you are struggling to fit, or something's not quite right, or there's friction of some kind. This morning's passage is about inclusion with Christ, being in with Him, which requires that we realize we do not deserve to be in with Christ. The qualification for our inclusion with God and with His Son and with His Spirit is that we realize that we are worthy of exclusion. We're going to talk about that and experience some encouragement, I believe some healing this morning. It'll be very helpful for us. First of all, I want us to think about this shadow or foreshadowing that's presented in the text. So look at verses 10 and 11 of Hebrews 13, where the author says, "We have an altar from which those who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy place by the high priest as an offering for sin are burned outside the camp." There's the concept of being outside the camp. These verses present a lot of images or icons, practices of the Old Testament, practices held by those adherents to Judaism. As we've talked throughout this study, the author is pleading with Christians, followers of Jesus, pleading with them to continue on in faith, trusting Christ and Christ alone. But the temptation was to go back to the community of Judaism, to the perceived safety of that community, the perceived security of that community, and to go back to all the rituals and all the traditions, thinking that somehow they could secure themselves that way, whether through escaping persecution or just the sense of solidarity that it seemed to offer them, or familiarity or comfort or whatever. And the author is pleading with them to continue on in the faith, believing that they are saved people, rescued by Jesus. He says, look, this is your life. This is your holiness. This is your sanctification. This is your security, your relationship with God through Jesus. Your inclusion with Him is of the highest value. And so, helping them to realize that, he speaks of all these different realities of the Old Covenant. The tabernacle, which was like the tent, the sacred tent, the meeting place with God, which is what it represented. And then you have the animals who were sacrificed mentioned, and the priests mentioned, and the camp itself, which was where all the people were gathered together. All of those different terms that paint the picture for us of the Israelites, especially as they wandered in the wilderness, moving along in community with one another, with these different practices. And a very important one of those practices was the ongoing practice of animal sacrifice as a means of atonement, covering for sin, knowing that every one of them had an infinite sin debt. Every one of them was guilty of failing to love God and love one another. They were all guilty. And there was this provision, according to the Old Covenant law, that they would offer these animal sacrifices as a means of atonement. And so that's what's being referred to here. And in the practice, and let's go ahead and turn back to Exodus 29 for an example of this, okay? There are lots of different examples throughout the Old Testament. But if you just turn to Exodus 29, We'll see one example. And try to picture in your mind what they did with these animals, these sin offerings. Exodus 29, start in verse 10. It says, "Then you shall bring the bull before the tent of meeting, and Aaron," which is like the high priest, like the first high priest, "and his sons shall lay their hands on the head of the bull. You shall slaughter the bull before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. You shall take some of the blood of the bull and put it on the horns of the altar with your finger. And you shall pour out all the blood at the base of the altar. You shall take all the fat that covers the entrails and the lobe of the liver and the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them and offer them up in smoke on the altar." And then notice verse 14. "But the flesh of the bull and its hide and its refuse you shall burn with fire outside the camp. It is a sin offering." So here's one example, vivid example of what they would do. In this case, it's a bull. They slit its throat, spill the blood. The blood is applied to the altar. Different parts of the animal are burnt up there. And then the carcass is taken outside the camp, signifying separation, signifying that it was representing the guilt and shame of sin and the curse of sin. So that rotting, decaying, gnarly, nasty body of that animal was taken outside the camp, separate from where the people were. Again, emblematic of that sin and that curse and that guilt and that shame imputed to that animal. Very important. And there were many, many ways and many times when they sacrificed animals in similar type fashion. The Day of Atonement, you can think of that perhaps. And of course, practicing Jewish people today still observe the Day of Atonement, right? All having to do with that covering for sin. And what is sin? Well, we've been talking about that a lot recently, and we've described it in different ways. But one way to understand it is to understand not just the things that we do to one another, but how we view and treat God Himself. In fact, this passage referring to exclusion, the expelling of the Son of God, back here in Hebrews 13, helps us to even appreciate the essence of sin, what is underneath all sin, which is a minimization of God's value and worth, excluding Him. So, in Hebrews 13, after describing those Old Testament practices, in verse 12, he says, "Therefore Jesus also, that He might sanctify the people through His own blood, suffered outside the gate." Jesus, like that animal carcass, being cast out, viewed and treated as unclean and cursed. We could think of Jesus' death outside the gates of Jerusalem, where He was killed. Calvary, different terms, Golgotha, place of the skull, treated like the worst of criminals. Cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree, as it says in the Old Testament, and Jesus goes to the cross. So His life ended that way. But there was exclusion, there was rejection, there was disapproval from the very beginning, wasn't there? In John chapter 1, it says, He came to His own, and His own received Him not. When He was born, little baby Jesus, not appreciated, not valued. In fact, there was no room for Him where? In the inn, right? And then even as we see the details of his ministry recorded throughout the Gospels, we see over and over again human reproach, human disapproval, human rejection. As people disagreed with him, conspired against him, even people that he ministered to, often it was deemed insufficient. Remember, he gave the people bread miraculously, and then at some certain point he stopped. He said, I'm no longer going to give them bread. They're looking for bread to fill their stomachs, but they're not really interested in what I have to offer them in terms of offering myself as the bread of life. And so he withholds the physical bread at that point, and a lot of people depart from him, don't they? Once all the goodies are gone, he's of no value any longer, so they leave. He cleanses 10 lepers, and how many returns to say thank you? 1. Ways in which Jesus was appreciated and valued, but over time you see more and more the clarity of the rejection of Christ, the undervaluing of Christ. I mean, think of the Creator himself comes into this world, rubs shoulders with the people whom he has made and who are rebellious against him, wreaking havoc in their lives and all around themselves, and he lovingly offers himself, offers relationship, offers truth, offers miraculous healings and all the good things that he's done for them. And yet over and over and over again, his worth is diminished, even by his closest followers, even by his disciples themselves. As he goes into his final moments, and even as he predicted, when the shepherd is struck, the sheep scatter. Every man for himself. Having to do with a manifestation of this human condition, this human tendency to minimize the worth of God himself. That's what we see in Jesus as he bears reproach. Listen to Isaiah 53, verses 2 and 3. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should be attracted to him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. I mean, that was the story of his life. And it was a revelation of man's treatment of God, seen in their treatment of his Son, as he's treated by the people whom he created as if he had no worth, treated as the worst of sinners, tried, wrongfully convicted, beaten, tortured, mocked, and then crucified. Is there anything reproachable about Jesus, really? I mean, is there anything that warrants disapproval? Well, we all know the right answer to that question. Of course not. Okay, now a question for you personally. Is there anything reproachable about you personally? I see people nodding. As it relates to us, there is much that is reproachable, isn't that right? I mean, there's much that is unworthy, to put it mildly. There's much, put it a different way, that is worthy of being disapproved of. It's true. As we try to be honest about regularly, we are all selfish, self-absorbed, self-serving. We're all damaging to others. It's true. There is much that is reproachable about us. There is nothing that is reproachable about him. And yet he allows his creatures to treat him this way. To reject him, to send him outside the camp. Underneath it, as Genesis reveals chapters 1, 2, and 3, as Paul describes in great detail in Romans 1, 2, and 3, underneath this human tendency, this failure to love God with heart, soul, mind, and strength, this reality that we don't see God for who He is. In fact, Romans 1 says that it's a revelation of God to us, for us to even be able to, catch this is fascinating, for us to even be able to realize that. I mean, so often we have things that we think in our lives. I was talking with a friend recently, and he was giving me some examples as he was just aware of himself and aware of how his thinking, even when it's not explicitly related to God, he was just saying he realizes that the thinking that goes through his head, like, but if I just had more, if this were just different, or if that were just different, or this isn't fair, or why would that person be allowed to get away with that and not me over here with my circumstances? Or, I mean, whatever the comparisons, whatever the things that just go through our minds so regularly, and we don't even explicitly really think of God, and yet what God is saying to us through His Word, what is objectively true, whatever we may feel about it or not, is that God says there is within us opposition to Him. And all the harmful thoughts and all the destructive thoughts and actions are all a manifestation of that. Underneath are undervaluing God Himself. That's true. This is a moment of diagnosis, okay, for all of us. And as a result of that, when Jesus was with His people, He was rejected to the point that He was executed outside the camp. Which is fitting, isn't it? Because that's where the sin offering was to go. I mean, if He's going to bear our curse, then there has to be a separation. For there to be holiness, the unclean, the cursed, has to be separated. And this is what's fascinating. In verse 13, the author of Hebrews, knowing that his readers are being tempted and enticed, deceived into thinking that there's something for them other than Jesus, he pleads with them, let us go out to Him, outside the camp, bearing His reproach. I mean, as we talked about a few moments ago, it's the reproach that, if we're honest with ourselves, it's the reproach that we deserve. And Jesus says, though you treat me that way, excluding me, I'm telling you, I include you. Just come out to where I am. And what does it take to go? I mean, how does one get out there? Well, if we think in physical terms, it's like you just physically run out there to Him. Sure. But I mean, what does it take on the inside to even compel us, to even propel us forward in that direction? Here's what it takes for us to see the truth about ourselves. To see that, wow, God, I have done so much damage to myself and other people. I am my own worst enemy, all because of how I minimize your worth. And God, if you will still have me, if you will still find it in your heart to accept me, then I'm coming out to you. We strive and we struggle to try to fit in with other people, to gain a sense of respect and approval. We want so bad. I mean, in counseling, I sit with people and I have my own examples of this in my own life, where it's like the most painful things you hear from people are how they are rejected by others. They've helped other people and those people don't appreciate it. Can you relate to that in any way? Parents? Grandparents? Serving, helping, at your own personal cost, energy, cost of money, whatever, and they just don't appreciate it. Does that sound or feel familiar? I mean, you've tried to befriend a certain, and they reject you. You can tell by the look on their face, you can tell by the vibes that like they're against you. And you don't You don't even know why. And you just feel like you feel, and that's it's not a pleasant thing. And so we strive and we just want so bad just to be included, to be accepted somewhere with someone, or hopefully a whole lot of people. And that's, again, to one degree, that's normal. That's part of being created in God's image. And yet it plagues us, doesn't it? When we just feel like we need something from those associations and from that human approval. Like we need to somehow establish our sense of worth. And the way it works in this world, is it not merit-based? It's like approval by merit. So go back to elementary school with me for a moment. You're there with the other kids, and you're observing things. Who are the cool kids? Who are the tough kids? For boys, who's the toughest? Who's the toughest on the schoolyard? Who can beat up the most people, right? For the girls, who's the prettiest? Who's the smartest? I mean, just like those evaluations and the meritocracy that it is, and the jockeying for position and trying, who are my people? Where do I fit, right? In the workplace, in the gym, it's all about how much can you do, and how fast can you run, and how long can you run, and how much can you lift, and how much. It's all the stuff, right? And in the church, no, it doesn't happen in church, right? In the church, it's usually, how much do you know? How knowledgeable are you in terms of Bible knowledge? What's your vocabulary? How well do you communicate? How good are you at praying? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's things like that, right? It's like we're still evaluating, where do I fit, and how do I kind of find my place, and who are my people here? And I mean, it's just very normal. It's very human, and it's merit-based. And the irony is about what the author of Hebrews is unfolding, the glory and beauty of what he is unfolding for his people, is he's saying, look, this is demerit-based. Whereas in this whole world system, including religious systems, your inclusion is a result of what you earn for yourself. He says this is entirely different. Your inclusion is what you receive. As you admit to yourself and to your God, I'm not worthy. God, I have mistreated you. I'm the one who's worthy of death, not you. Confessing, agreeing with God concerning what is true, and knowing that the only way I could ever be in with you, God, is if you make that possible, is if you take care of, if you atone for my sins, my faults, my failures, my weaknesses. And Jesus goes out there and says, come on out. This is where you're safest. This is where you're loved the most. This is where your soul is healed in fellowship with Him, receiving what only your Creator Himself can ever really give you. I mean, the closer you get to other people, even the most impressive, polished, the most winsome people, the people that seem to have the most going for them, I mean, if you just spend a lot of time with them, it won't take long for you to discover they have selfish, unhealthy ways of thinking and being that are reproachable. And so do you. And Jesus has no such reproachability. And so he says, listen, if you want to be well, if you want to enjoy the kind of holiness that God creates, it's not through your own religious traditions. It's not through what you do or don't do, eat or don't eat, where you go or don't go. It's one way. It's through fellowship with my Son outside the camp, where there is truth and honesty and exposure and covering, atonement, which God provides. And that's what the big word atonement means, covering. He took care of all the sin. He purified all the sin. It unpacks that for us from the beginning of Hebrews on. Through His sacrifice, through His own blood, He sanctified the people, rendering us holy. Nothing else. Nothing we've done. Nothing we've tried to offer God in some kind of negotiation. Nothing we've manufactured. Jesus alone. That's amazing. Inclusion. Unlike anything in this world. Far better gifts of a gracious God. So he says, come out. Outside the camp. It's a lonely place in a sense. It's a place of rejection. It's a place of reproach. It's a place of being misunderstood. It's a place of shame. It's a place of curse. It's also a place of the greatest love a person can ever know. It's also a place of acceptance with the highest, yet the humblest King. It's also a place where you get to live with Christ. It's also a place of confidence and hope with Jesus outside the camp. Would you turn with me, just to help us appreciate this a bit more, turn with me to Psalm 69. Psalm 69, this is a psalm of David. You remember King David? One of the most well-known characters of the Old Testament. Highly important position. Became king of Israel. It wasn't a cakewalk for David, was it? It was not. If you would read with me the psalm, and let's just make a few observations. We're going to zero in on a particular portion of it, but let's just read through it and hear David's heart for a moment as he struggled in his human relationships, with his human insecurity, and you'll hear it as we read along. Join him in the struggle here. He says, "Save me, O God, for the waters have threatened my life. I have sunk in deep mire, and there is no foothold. I have come into deep waters, and a flood overflows me. I am weary with my crying, my throat is parched, my eyes fail while I wait for my God. Those who hate me without a cause are more than the hairs of my head. Those who would destroy me are powerful, being wrongfully my enemies. What I did not steal, I then have to restore? Like, what did I ever do to these people that they would so despise me?" Verse 5, "O God, it is you who knows my folly, and my wrongs are not hidden from you. May those who wait for you not be ashamed through me, O Lord God of hosts. May those who seek you not be dishonored through me, O God of Israel. Because for your sake I have borne reproach. Dishonor has covered my face. I have become estranged from my brothers and an alien to my mother's sons. For zeal for your house has consumed me, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen on me. When I wept in my soul with fasting, it became my reproach. When I made sackcloth my clothing, I became a byword to them. Those who sit in the gate talk about me, and I am the song of the drunkards. They mock me. They make fun of me. They spend a lot of time and energy thinking about me, talking about me, putting me down. This is what they do. But as for me," he says, "my prayer is to you, O Lord, at an acceptable time. O God, in the greatness of your loving kindness, answer me with your saving truth. Deliver me from the mire and do not let me sink. May I be delivered from my foes and from the deep waters. May the flood water not overflow me, nor the deep swallow me up, nor the pit shut its mouth on me. Answer me, O Lord, for your loving kindness is good. According to the greatness of your compassion, turn to me, and do not hide your face from your servant, for I am in distress. Answer me quickly." Notice these verses, verse 18 and following. "Oh, draw near to my soul and redeem it. Ransom me because of my enemies. You know my reproach and my shame and my dishonor. All my adversaries are before you. Reproach has broken my heart, and I am so sick. And I looked for sympathy, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none." I mean, stop there for a moment. Maybe some of you have felt that way. I look all around me. Even the people I thought I could trust the most have abandoned me, have betrayed me, have rejected me, have hurt me. I mean, we're all extremely sensitive to how we're treated. We are. David was. We are too. They belittle me. They make fun of me. They hate me. They want me gone. I mean, all this stuff. This is what he sees as he looks around him. And you think of King David's life, from Saul who wanted him dead, the fracturing of his own family, the many, many people in his kingdom who thought that he was unqualified and should be executed and wished harm for him and were jealous of him and despised him for innumerable reasons. This is David, and he wasn't unaware of it. And he felt it at the depth of his soul. And he's crying out here to God about all this reproach. And look what he says next in verse 21, and this should sound familiar to you. They also gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Is this psalm about David? Yeah, it's about David. It's about his real experiences, about what he was thinking, what he was feeling in his real life. Assuredly, David was being victimized by a lot of people, and a good amount of it was unfair and unwarranted. But was David above reproach? Was David worthy of any reproach? Did David have any guilt? Was there any appropriate shame for King David? Oh yeah. And we got little glimpses of it in the story. Incident with Bathsheba, adultery, murder of Uriah, numbering of the people. In the middle of David serving God and living his life, there was still a lot of David mixed in with that, wasn't there? And he was seeing some things clearly. And at moments you see him uncovering, exposing the sin of his own heart. Some of our most impactful Psalms, or where David says, against you and you alone have I sinned, God. It says in Romans 4, as it's thinking, or Paul's looking back at David's life, and he quotes one of the Psalms where David says, how blessed is the man for whom or to whom you do not impute iniquity, the one who is forgiven. David knew his need for forgiveness. He was a human being like us. And it was about him. And ultimately, more profoundly, it was about who? Jesus. The one who was in no way reproachable and yet was reproached, was despised and forsaken. The author of Hebrews says, beware, lest you consider as unclean the Son of God and trample him under your feet by minimizing his worth as if somehow all of this is up to you. It's up to him. He endured. He absorbed the reproach. He absorbed the curse, the shame. He was forsaken even by his own Father on the cross, experiencing what we deserve, experiencing the exclusion that we deserve so that we might be reconciled in relationship with him, forever forgiven, in with our Creator. I mean, in these moments, I'm hearing the words coming out of my mouth, and I'm saying, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. Help me to believe that that's true. There's so many other ways I am tempted to try to secure myself, including in relationships. And what I feel like I need from people. So often we stumble. So often we do ourselves in with preoccupation with what others are thinking of us. I read years ago an author who was very insightful about the human condition, and he said, mankind is not so much in search of truth as it is in search of votes. Romans 1 says that we're looking for people who will approve of us even as we engage in all the manifestations of unrighteousness. We just need people who can agree with us. In this effort, as Paul says later in Romans in chapter 9 and chapter 10, that those who miss Christ, those who stumble over the stumbling stone of Jesus and the good news of the gospel of God's grace, they do so because they do it, they seek for righteousness as if it is by works. And then later in chapter 10, he says, not seeing the righteousness of God in Jesus, not seeing His perfect righteousness, they seek to establish a righteousness of their own, to their own peril. And so much of the human relational battle for approval and acceptance, so much of it is not unrelated to that striving for a righteousness of our own, and God just patiently and lovingly and convincingly upholds before us the perfect righteous Son of God and says, believe in Him. Because when you have Jesus, you have God. And when you have God, what do you lack? God, help us to believe this. Help us to believe it's true. We feel a lot of the things that David felt. And maybe God allows us to feel those things when we feel rejected, when we feel undervalued, when we feel as though we're not worthy. I mean, maybe God allows us to feel those things to get our attention and says to us in a sense, welcome to my world. If we're thinking clearly, we know that there's plenty reproachable about me. Jesus, there's nothing reproachable about you. The fact that you love me, that you offer me forgiveness, that you offer me inclusion and acceptance, that you're not looking for me to clean anything up, to prove myself to you, to show myself worthy of fitting in. You're just inviting me to come outside the camp, to admit my state. And that is where He fellowships with us. In that place. It is awesome. It is the gospel.